Good morning. It is 7:17 a.m. on Friday, March 19th, 2021. I'm Christiana Ellis and I just got up. This is 5 more minutes. So, I got to watch well, more than two things, but two things in particular that I'm thinking of yesterday. One is the one that I probably enjoyed the most, which is videos of my niece's second birthday party, which was adorable. Obviously, it's not much of it's not like a big group party. It was a pandemic party, but lots of cute videos of little 2-year-old grabbing a handful of cake and then, oh, it's pretty good. I also watched the Snyder cut, which I talked about yesterday. And so if you want to watch yesterday's video, you can see where my expectations were, and I talk a little bit about some feelings of ambivalence about how the movie came about in terms of how it was released and everything. So today though, I will talk about how was it actually? And the answer was better than I expected. My expectations were pretty low, as I talked about yesterday, in the sense that, generally speaking, I've not been a big fan of Zack Snyder as a filmmaker. He clearly has a lot of talent around visuals and like action choreography and everything like that. But he just makes a lot of storytelling choices that are not to my personal taste. And that's fine for other people to disagree, but that's how I feel. But I actually found in watching this one that that was less of an issue than I expected. It's true that compared to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, for example, the DC movies and this one in particular, and Zack Snyder's in particular, tend to be very serious and weighty, and I think that I would have called some of his movies grim. And this one, although the stakes are pretty high, I actually feel like it does feel a bit lighter than some of his movies have. And there was, especially, once we get towards the end as the team's coming together, there is a little bit of a celebration of, of what that means and what it means to be a hero and that sort of thing. And some of that, plays well, with my own personal preferences in terms of superheroes. I feel like there's a fair amount of the movie that I'm watching and I'm like, yeah, I like this. This is good. I will say that, gosh, I'm just trying to organize my thoughts. I didn't plan this review out very well. First of all, there is zero way that the movie could have been released like this in the theater. It's just too long, and frankly, it is long by just taking every single scene shot and putting it all in the movie, which is frankly not great for pacing. So actually, that's what I would say is like my primary criticism of the movie would just be that is a pacing question of like there are lots of times where it feels like, okay, in this scene we set up that this thing is urgent, like the destruction of the entire planet could literally happen any second now, and we don't know how, like it could be any second now for all we know. It might be longer, but it could be right away. We don't know how long it'll take. And that would be the end of everything. But we have time to cut away and spend 12 minutes kind of just hanging around, talking some more. Gosh, I guess we gotta have a plan. and it just makes the whole sense of urgency feel really stop and start, and that's awkward. There's also a lot of scenes where, like, the thing that is happening is exciting and interesting, but it's just taking a really long time to happen. Like, there were multiple points in the movie where I was like, come on. Okay, let's get on with it. Like, including during action sequences where, like, there'll be a moment where characters are saying, like, gotta do it now. You gotta do it now. I can't hold on to this much longer. When's it gonna happen? Oh my gosh. I gotta keep going. When? Tell me when to do it. We gotta do it now. Oh my gosh, when are we gonna do it? Come on. Okay, it's gotta be now. Oh my gosh. When are we gonna do it? It's important. Gotta do it now. Oh my gosh. I can't hold on much longer. Oh my gosh. It's gotta keep going. And it just starts feeling like, okay, come on, we get it. Minutes will go by where nothing appreciably changes about the situation. It's occasionally pretty exasperating in that regard. But, like I said, part of the impatience comes from I'm interested in seeing what's going to happen and what happens next. And so, like, if I just didn't care, I would just be looking at my phone instead of getting frustrated with the movie. So, there is that. Like, one of the things that I think is really remarkable about it is how different it is, right? It's much more different than I expected. Like, most of the movie is different. Like, there's a handful of scenes that I remember from the first one, from the theatrical cut, which, like, and the thing is, too, that more of it that I assumed might have been Joss Whedon's influence turns out to maybe not have been. And so, who knows? Like a lot of the Flash's humor, I had kind of assumed must be Joss Whedon because that is just not something that I've typically seen in Zack Snyder's movies before. But a lot of the Flash's humor is still here in this version, and it's very welcome because so much of the rest of the movie is very serious. This is the most serious thing that has ever happened. All of humanity is depending on us, and if we don't do this right now, everything we know and care about will end, and this is serious. You gotta know how serious it is. If you believe me how serious it is yet. I buy that, like, the destruction of the planet, like, yeah, that's serious, sure. And for that matter, too, like, Steppenwolf in this version is certainly established more as, like, he's more well-rounded, like, we get him a bit more. He looks pretty different. And although I had to look up an image of what he actually looked like in the other version, and it's like, oh yeah, that is pretty different. And he's a pretty convincing threat. There's some significant action sequences where we're just like, gosh, yeah, this is a serious dude. We believe that we need a team to handle this guy. So yeah, a lot of it works pretty well. But like I said, my biggest complaints with it would really just be that you could literally trim half an hour out of this movie without changing any of the plot. Because a lot of it is just stuff taking a long time to happen. And a lot of it is scenes that you sort of feel like this isn't really contributing to anything. Like, this particular shot feels like it has 5 extra seconds at the beginning and 6 extra seconds at the end. Like, there's the part that the shot's supposed to be, but it just lingers on both ends. It feels like if this version were going to be released in theaters, Zack Snyder himself probably would have cut it down a fair amount. And I think I probably would have enjoyed that better. It also has a lot of scenes that are clearly only in here as fan service, which, frankly, given the nature of how the movie came about, maybe that makes sense, right? Like, the movie exists to be fan service. Like, this version of the movie would not exist except to be fan service. And so, in that context, a lot of these scenes are, it's like the extended edition of Lord of the Rings. They just put all the scenes back in the movie, even though they're fairly disruptive to the pacing in a lot of contexts, and also just sort of feels like, just like people joke about the Return of the King just not ending because it just kind of keeps going. It keeps having new endings. Well, this one kind of does that too. And I will say that, frankly, the movie, had me feeling more positive about it, and then it was really kind of like depleting its own capital by how long it kept going by the end. So I feel like there's a surprisingly large amount of stuff in it that I liked a fair amount. Better than I expected, for sure. But too long, too slow. Too much stuff that doesn't really contribute to the plot and is really just there for people to go, ooh, 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 do the Leonardo DiCaprio from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood meme. There's too much stuff in it that really feels like it's only for that purpose, and that, I'm less interested in that stuff. So that's my personal take on the Snyder Cut of Justice League. For the people who were, desperately hoping for this and for this movie to come out like this is a great victory for them, and they are going to savor and relish every little frame of footage. Great. I hope you like it, but I also know that in some regards there was a lot of toxicity online that came out of that whole movement. And while there was good stuff too, charity, like lots of money raised for suicide prevention charities, and I mean, that's good. But at the same time, there were times that I observed personally where people seemed to think that they could point at the fact that that money was raised as justification that the whole movement is actually good, and if you don't think so, then you need to shut up and so to some extent, like, I'm already seeing it spin up online in the sense that, as mentioned yesterday, it's become increasingly clear Joss Whedon, not a great guy in person. No argument. But there are already people who are starting to now insist that everything that Joss Whedon cut in his version of the movie was cut for these, like, sinister, ulterior, racist motives, which I think is a stretch, especially because, like, there's a lot of things that I think probably should have been cut because they don't actually contribute to the movie very much. So, like, a long, slow scene that is not necessary to explain the plot, cutting that is not racist just because it happens to feature a character of color. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know what was in Joss Whedon's heart, but I'm just seeing that people's already spinning up discussion that that's the only possible explanation, which is silly. All right, so yeah, that's my final statement on the Snyder Cut, at least for now, unless something else happens. Better than I expected. Still too much. The analogy that I made on Twitter and Facebook yesterday was, it's like you go to a barbecue and someone says, oh, try the potato salad. And you say, yeah, I've had potato salad before. It's not my favorite. And they say, oh, well, this is an all-new kind of potato salad. It's a brand new recipe. I think you'll like it more. Please try it. And I'm like, okay, I'll try the new flavor of potato salad. And I try it, and I take a bite, and I say, you know what? Yeah, that's better. I like this okay. And they say, good. And then they dump a whole big plate and fill my whole big pile on my plate and fill my plate with it. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I mean, it's better, but that's more than I wanted. That's what this movie feels like. All right, I'll leave it there, and I'll talk to you all tomorrow for 5 more minutes.